in the absence of the Chairman and Vice Chairman today, can I call for nominations for Chairman of this meeting?
Who's also get it?
I'd like to second that.
That's it. Yeah, okay. Thanks very much for your nomination and welcome to the March meeting of the Audit and Risk Management Committee. Sederunt and Apologies, first of all, Claire.
Chairman, apologies from Councillors Dykes and Gilroy, 9 members present.
Thank you. Declarations of interest, anyone? I'll take silence as signifying that there are no declarations of interest. Okay, on today's agenda, we have various items, important items of strategic business, and I'm sure that I can count on your assistance in helping to ensure that we will, in fact, fulfil a role in providing an independent assurance and review of the business which is in front of us today. On that basis, we'll proceed as accords. The first item, item number 3, minute of the meeting of the 2nd of December. Is that, colleagues, a correct record? Thank you. Item number 4 is the Corporate Risk Register update for 2014-15. It's a report by the Head of Corporate Support. The purpose of this report is to provide members with an update on the progress which has been made with the risks in the Corporate Risk Register. In October of last year, this committee noted 9 risks on the Corporate Risk Register and requested a progress report to today's meeting. The report provides a good amount of detail for our consideration, and I'm particularly pleased that we have officers in attendance who will be able to update members on the progress as well as deal with any questions. It would be my suggestion, you'll see the risks are set out, colleagues, on a sequential basis, and it would be my suggestion to you that we deal with each of these risks in the order in which they're contained in the report. Is that acceptable? Okay. On that basis then, can we open the meeting up to member debate? David.
Thanks, Chair. I think, given what we're reading in the papers and seeing on television over the last number of months, I think the question I'd like to ask at the present moment, are we comfortable that everybody's on risk 1, sorry, page 7 of 88, are we comfortable that everybody's working together and exchanging information as necessary to ensure the protection of the children?
Do you wish to respond, Lillian, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to report that clearly one of the areas that we've focused on is the multi-agency sharing of information to ensure that any information that becomes available for any of the agencies is shared out. The Children's Services Executive Group meet weekly, and I am confident, as far as we can ever eliminate risk, that we have in process a robust situation where we can share information.
Thank you. Wally.
Yeah, Chair, I wish I could share the same confidence as Lillian has just outlined. And my experience is that indeed they are not working together, where indeed health seems to be a way out here in Garfek and not tying in with the authorities, neither as the named person or indeed many of the outcomes. And it concerns me, the report that we have here, where on page 8, the Care Inspectorate identified significant weaknesses and stated that progress to embed the GIRFIC approach is at an early stage. And then we look at the progress. But there is nothing in here either to tell me or from my own experience that we are coming to grips with GIRFIC. And no later than yesterday, Chair, in your presence, we raised this under education, where GIRFIC seems to be, on many of the cases, that is getting it wrong for every child, and very much to do with where health is and how we bring health into the equation to look at outcomes and positive outcomes for the children and their families. And too often in the cases that I've been dealing with, I've been, to put it mildly, less than impressed with the way that we're approaching this. I think we need a separate report on terms of the audit of risk to children, to their families, and indeed that we are addressing the issue as is outlined in GIRFIC. And too often we're not seeing it, Chair. And I'm not looking for a bland reply. I'm looking to see, give us something that says we are coming to grips with it, that we can see it by illustration, that GIRFIC is working and that we are operating it correctly in the way that it was outlined.
Thank you. Lillian.
Thank you for that. I mean, clearly I've indicated that we are expecting the outcome, the written outcome from the Care Inspectorate, which is an external scrutiny body who will be providing a written report on the progress that they believe that we've made, both in terms of vulnerable children and indeed in addressing some of the GIRFIC issues that have been raised. I can confirm and be absolutely clear that health are at the table through the Children's Services Executive Group. Joe Cochrane, who is here on behalf of Colin Grant, would be more than happy, if required, Chair, to give an update on the progress made within the GIRFIC agenda.
Okay. Josephine, do you wish to add anything to that?
We have a GIRFIC implementation plan. We are obviously at the mercy in some ways of the government, who are issuing guidance, who have just issued recent guidance, so we have to make sure that the guidance is in line with the new guidance coming out of the Scottish Government in terms of the plans. When the joint inspection report came out, we unpicked our entire process towards GIRFIC. We unpicked our training towards staff to take the key elements of GIRFIC information sharing, named person, chronologies, children's plans. We've introduced a new child's plan template, which went live on Monday morning. I absolutely understand what Mr. Scobie is saying. Last year, we looked at 250 children's records to see exactly what was going on with children, and what we saw was not very comforting, but we have taken steps to ensure that that is being dealt with through the new processes that we've put in place.
Thank you. Before I bring you back in, Wally, the one observation I'd make is that the two replies you've received are by no means bland. I think you would agree with that. Right, in you come.
Got to do, I'll agree with that, but what they are is, they are very hybrid. And in another life, when I sat in an industrial tribunal and a college came forward, they had papers for everything and practices for nothing, Chair. So what we've got here is, and we're hearing from Josephine that we're waiting on issues, guidance being issued from the Scottish Government. We're hearing that, that there is a weekly meeting of the Children's Service Executive Groups. What we're not seeing is working in practice on the ground, where, there are meetings, there are outcomes, there are follow-ons to those outcomes, and we're seeing them there. And I could give you illustration of case upon case upon case, where only this week I've asked, how can a person get access to CAMS? And who can refer? And I'm pursuing that. Chair of the board, but we need to see the issue, not waiting on guidance, we need to see it in practice. And that's what I'm saying. too big a risk where children are involved and families.
Yes, I don't think anyone in the chamber, Willie, would quibble with your last statement. Any other members wish to comment on the points being raised? Okay. Sorry, Lily.
I wonder, Chair, if I could just clarify, we're not waiting on guidance to start the implementation of GIRFIC.
Thank you. Archie.
Thanks, thanks, Chair. Just looking at risk 3, which is implementation of health and social care integration not meeting our expectations as a risk, rather as you know, the actual implementation side of things. Now, obviously we're going to be going into the interim board side of things in April this year, and I'm hearing that there has been meetings that have been cancelled over the past few months, not on behalf of the health board, but on behalf of the council itself. Now that causes me some concerns if we're actually going to be going into interim board and we're not ready for this as elected members who will be hopefully part of that particular board running that interim health and social care board. So I just want some assurances that things are happening, they're happening well, they're being involved, that we as elected members are being involved in that process, and we will be continuing through that year.
All valid and pertinent points, Archie. Do you wish to come back on any of that?
Certainly. Thank you, Chair. I can give an assurance to the committee that elected members will be fully involved in that. I think the issue about cancelled meetings, I think, was explained at the last social work committee. The chair of that committee gave a fairly full statement about what had gone on there, so that's a matter of record. Yes, of course, you will be involved. There's a seminar on the 19th of March to basically give a much fuller picture of where things are at the moment. And certainly you will play an absolutely key part in the scrutiny of the work of the Integrated Joint Board.
Do you want to come back on that, Archie?
No, I'm pleased with that assurance, Chair. There's one thing about the whole sort of the corporate risk register, and obviously there's, I mean, how useful has the risk register, the corporate risk register, actually been to the council and to members who have been in and staff who have been involved in that? Is the risk that we're actually looking at in the overall risk register correct? And what I mean by that is, what's the underlying issues that may affect the outcomes of the risk? I've got a couple of other questions as well, Chair.
Who's going to respond to that? Sure.
Certainly think, as risks are identified, we're certainly doing everything within social work services to mitigate those, and I'm confident that we're raising them appropriately.
My apologies. I said at the start we'd take these issues sequentially. I think we're well and truly involved with the first 3 at the moment. They've all become intermixed, but you know that's no great issue given the importance of what we're dealing with. As I say, we've certainly dealt with the first 2. The third one, the implementation of health and social care integration not meeting our expectations. Anyone wish to add anything to what's already been said? Sorry, Andrew, my apologies. Thank you.
Right. It was to ask, has the council's risk register aligned itself with the NHS risk register? And if not, when is that going to happen?
Hi, I'm Catherine Withington, the Programme Manager for Health and Social Care Integration. Excuse me. We actually have at the moment a programme risk register. We're in the design phase, and it's very much around the risks associated with the work streams, the 7 work streams that are in operation, which are putting the framework together. Each of the work streams has an NHS and a local authority lead, and their role is to identify any risk mitigation and to score those. They are then taken to the executive group on a monthly basis, and then onto the programme board, which has our third and independent sectors and other stakeholders around the table. So they're heavily monitored each month.
Can I follow?
By all means, please.
When this takes place, when is it likely to come back to elected members to see if it aligns itself with the elected members' appetite to risk?
If I could answer that, Chair, thank you. Clearly, in the shadow year, the formation of the risk register will be a decision for the integrated joint board, which will have elected members' representation.
Sorry, if you don't mind indulging. But once again, that's restricted down to a small number of elected members. And my understanding of risk is about it should reflect all elected members and not just a small proportion. And I would be very keen to see some mechanism whereby all elected members have an input on the exposure of risk that you're now suggesting we're going to be presented with.
Certainly happy to take that back to the executive group for discussion and note those points and ask for consideration. Thank you.
Archie?
I think it's just on the same similar point here as we've got the risk owner on the last column here as part of the risk, and I'm just wondering if the risk owner in this particular area is the right and proper person, being the chief officer designate for health and social care integration. Perhaps it should be the board of the integration board, because then you would have that member input, as opposed to having one person, although you would have the accountability from the chief. The actual board should be the risk owner, I think.
Would you wish to respond to that, Lillian, please?
Thank you, Councillor Dryburgh. It will be it's part of the legislation and guidance in terms of the implementation of the scheme. But again, happy to take those issues back and have them discussed at the executive board.
Both reassured, colleagues? Okay. Would we accept then that we move on to the fourth such risk, which is failing to take reasonable action to prevent a serious incident involving a vulnerable and/or elderly adult known to the council as being at risk of harm? Again, Lillian, you're and Graham, the leads in this, or the respondees in this, if I can get the terminology correct. Archie.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, this is very close to my heart, this particular one in vulnerable adults, especially in ex-servicemen. And I want to make sure that ex-servicemen and women are involved in when you look at this particular risk, because we have seen in the last week where we have a psychiatric nurse from NHS, for instance, helping veterans in Dumfries and Galloway for half a day a week. If we could extend that to 1 day a week for £5,000, the NHS are not willing to do that, but it makes such a positive contribution to those ex-service personnel life with depression, isolation, not particularly post-traumatic stress, but with those other mental health issues. So I'm wondering if there is a discussion that could be had on that particular issue with veterans, because I have seen the work of the psychiatric nurse with those veterans for half a day. I think for the full day, you can see more and certainly increase a better output for those. And I just wanted to make sure that the veterans are within that.
Graham?
Not familiar with that particular worker. I will so familiarise myself with that, and I'll give you an assurance. I'll come and talk to you about it.
Do you want to come back, Archie? Or? Any other questions in relation to this particular area of risk? No? Okay. Thanks to you both and to your colleagues for your involvement and input. Next risk we're dealing with is the adverse ruling and associated reputational damage as a result of not treating someone fairly or of not providing an adequate service. We have here Martin Ogilvie, Stuart Flanagan, and Anne Sweeten. Archie.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just looking at the progress to date. I mean, this is an adverse ruling and associated reputational damage as a result of not treating someone fairly or not providing an adequate service. Yet in the progress to date, we talk about fair treatment at work. That would, I presume, deal with employees as opposed to service users. I'm just, I hope there are some things in place that service users can actually use.
Martin?
Thank you, Chair. I think on the other side of the page, we talk more about the corporate complaints handling model and the good progress that's been made, I think, over recent years to tighten up that procedure, to get the deadlines met. But not only that procedural part, but also to complete the loop, which is the important part of it, which we're really concentrating on now, which is where a complaint is upheld, is to debrief that and to sort of mitigate the chance of a repeat failure by making sure that we debrief, we learn the lessons. We want then to complete that by making sure we get reassurance from the service that they've changed the process so that we won't get the same kind of complaint made again, but also that we feed back that information to the individual so that they know that their complaint has made a difference. And that's where the effort's being made at the minute. There's a lot of work being done to meet the deadlines for the investigations. It's now a concentrated effort, as I say, on completing that feedback.
Do you want to come back? Okay, right, thanks. Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. It was, once again, on progress to date, if we're looking near the bottom of the page, it talks about how if informal procedures are not successful, then there are formal processes that are in play. Can you give me an update as to whether these formal processes have been reviewed recently or are they now outdated?
Councillor, the informal and formal process forms part of the policy and procedure. We have a 2-year policy review life cycle. We constantly look for lessons learned within each individual case. Fundamental policy revisions take place at the 2-year period. We're constantly liaising with managers and the trade unions to make sure that the practice out there is in indeed compliance with the policy.
Yes. You said it was a 2 years. Now, whereabouts are we within that 2 years?
The review, the formal review, including trade union involvement, will be November this year.
Any other questions, colleagues? Or wish to this area of risk? No? Oh, thank you for your involvement and input. Next area is the potential benefits to the public and efficiency to the council that can be gained from effective community engagement and planning are lost or minimised. Harry Hay, Head of Improvement, Engagement and Community Services. Archie.
I think we all know, Chair, that one of the most important things moving forward within the council is how we actually work with community planning partners. And one of the areas where I see potential risk is in losing that CLD context to working with young people, with older people, with education, all within the realms of community benefits at the end of the day with regarding this engagement. So I'm just wanting a bit of assurance that after we've had the discussions at CCS and the way we've moved forward with CLD, that we will take into consideration the CLD requirements of each of the areas. And I know we're going to have the thing we talked about, senior moment, the area profiles coming up very shortly. And I'm sure there'll be something that is actually helpful within that to help CLD along.
Thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, I think it's an absolutely critical point and something that came out of the CLD service review. We've actually now met twice as a strategic CLD partnership, which has got key players including voluntary sector, NHS, a whole range of different council departments, education, social work, regeneration, CCS, and also Dumfries and Galloway colleges that have now been committed to working towards having a strategic CLD plan for the region by the 1st of September this year. Got to be a 3-year plan, and that will very clearly outline how collectively across all community planning partners we're going to engage in effective community engagement. We've got to do that by law. It's got to be in place by the 1st of September.
You want to come back, Archie? No, okay. Any other? David and then Andrew.
I think there's a few of us been here long enough to remember that when savings were being sought, it was CLD and the local services that always got hit. Now, given the service that CLD is putting out now, and I'm sure it's across the region, are doing an excellent job with all age groups, for youngsters right through to the elderly, and we need to ensure that these posts and these parts of the business are properly funded and running as efficiently as possible. As I say, they're doing a good job, and we need to ensure that they continue to do that, and we're not dragging the carpet from below their feet by reducing their funding. We've got to look at these things very carefully.
Thanks, David. Do you want to respond to that, Harry?
Yeah, just very quickly. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I'm confident that the decisions made at CCS committee on the 19th of February with regards to the outcomes of the service review will ensure that service is as sustainable as possible moving forward. In fact, not just the service, but the CLD sector across the region.
Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. It's on page 14 with the action plan. It's just a statement here that I do find I have difficulty with, where it says that the Dumfries and Galloway Council has good engagement and continues to improve since 2012 and 13. Can you evidence that? Because that's not the perception out there when I'm talking to community councils, etc., or any other organisation.
Thanks, Chair. We took a report to Policy and Resources Committee at the end of 2012 that recognised the fact that the national standards, which is the guidance which informs what is called robust and consistent community engagement, wasn't fully adopted across the council. I think, given the 2.5 years that have happened since then, there's a lot of good examples. There's still room for improvement, absolutely, we're not denying that, but I think there's a whole range of very, very good examples about how we do community engagement a lot better than what we did. I think there's also a greater understanding about the differences between communication and engagement and involvement, and they're all different things. Communication can simply be letting a stakeholder know what is happening and why. Good engagement is all about involving them in a way that they influence the decision-making process. I think if you look at simply, and a good example would be on a national basis, the Community Council periodic review we undertook has been held up nationally as the way to go about a periodic review. We involved over 90 community councils across the region. You're never going to satisfy everybody in terms of that type of process. Our Heritage Lottery Fund status is partly down to the fact that we were very proactive at involving communities about how funding drawn into Dumfries and Galloway could benefit the area. HLF have confirmed that that is one of the reasons why they've given Dumfries and Galloway priority status area. We have had a whole network of community area committee community meetings ranging from region-wide topics such as the budget development process right through to specific priorities. So all of that, I think, is progress, but as I've said in this risk register, I think there's still room for improvement. There's always going to be room for improvement, and that's why I've suggested that it remains as part of the corporate risk register. But I think in comparison to where we were 24 months ago, I think things have moved on considerably.
Do you want to respond to that, Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, if you don't mind. I was just wondering whether it would be possible to get a report into evaluating where we are at present, because as it is part of the action plan, it would give myself a better understanding, and maybe other elected members, just the scope of progress that you have made and where we stand at present.
Harry?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, the Council's made a clear commitment at the end of last calendar year to develop an involvement strategy, and quite clearly good community engagement is going to be a critical strand of that. So if members support that direction of travel, I'm quite happy to ensure that the information that Councillor Wood's after is incorporated into that process, because the two have got to go in hand in hand.
Archie?
Chair, I'm just looking at page 15 of 88, and that actually is within the action plan for September this year, so I think we'll see that happening anyway. I have to say that at the last area committee that we had a community engagement on the budget side of things. This, I'm talking specifically about Annandale and Eskdale, and this was the amount of people that turned up there was fantastic. Every one of them thought that they had been listened to and their concerns taken on board. And that was 100% right across the feedback that we got from that particular area. So I was quite pleased with that feedback.
I think you've every reason to be pleased. But, okay, any other comments on this? No, right. Can we move on then to thanks Harry for your input. Move on to the next risk to be considered. The risk number 7. My computation is correct. And we have Rona Lewis, Service Manager, Legal and Regulatory, and Martin Ogilvie again, Senior Manager, Business Management. The risk, as you're well aware, is a significant service failure within the Council, one of its partners or one of its contractors. Colleagues? Graham?
Thanks, Chair. It's obviously one of my pet subjects as well as procurement and whatnot. Obviously, as the, we're setting up a subcommittee in the Council to deal with that, and elected members will be fully engaged in how the process works. But I've always been quite concerned about this because it's not just about fairness and giving and transparency of these contracts. It's about a vibrant local economy, and I think it's very, very important we should be we should be a wee bit more biased towards local traders. As the main thing is that we've got to improve the economy of this region. This is what always concerns me. I know there's in the past there's been very, very large national contracts that have been tied in through Scotland Excel, through the procurement, but there is other ways of helping the local economy, and I hope this could be implemented and dealt through the subcommittee of the panel of elected members.
Who's going to respond to that? Rona?
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks to Councillor Bell for his ongoing interest in procurement, which we appreciate. I think in terms of risk, and I think I've said this before, I very much think having local suppliers is a good thing in terms of managing your risk, because we know that the local businessmen and our tradesmen are going up the high street on a Saturday morning, and if things aren't going terribly well, you know, people like yourselves and the general public are the first to tell them. So in terms of managing risk and ensuring service delivery, I fully agree that our local contractors have a role to play there.
Want to come back, Graham?
I think Rona's answered the question. Chair, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other members? No? So you're all busy poring over your papers. Are you sort of getting your thoughts collected, or are you looking at the next area of risk? Well, I mean, I'm not going to canvass questions. You know, we'll leave it on that basis. That thanks to you both. Thank you. Risk number 8 is that of the council failing to deliver a major project on time and within budget. And the officer speaking to this one will be Claire Renton. Thanks, Claire. Archie.
Thanks very much. You're obviously the major projects within the regions of our schools, facilities that are going up, our learning town and all that. There's a lot of partners that we're actually working with, and there's a risk in actually working with some of those partners. Looking at it nationally, there are major issues with regards blacklisting companies and things like that, and there is a risk there to the council when you go back to, do we actually employ somebody who's a blacklister, and then you get the bad PR from that side of things. And I'm just wondering how we're managing that information that's coming from our partners to say that they are not on this particular list, or the PQQ side of things is actually working.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor. With respect to the topic of blacklisting, there's specific guidance out from the Scottish Government and Scottish Futures Trust, which we're adhering to. In relation to that, you highlighted the key strategic projects in terms of the schools programme, and that's executed through Hub Southwest, the development partner. And again, that's all pre-tendered framework items, and the whole subject of blacklisting has been addressed through the whole framework to make sure that we are being compliant with all the guidance given from government.
Satisfied with the response, Archie? Okay, right. Any other? David?
Thanks, Chair. I'm looking at page 20. There's 2 reports here of work at schools going over the contracted sum. What sort of monitoring are we doing on that? And to ensure that this is not coming as a surprise and that we can justify this increase, and it's by more than 5% on both of them.
Chair, Councillor, noted the two projects that are mentioned here, and as detailed in the paper, we are going to do a review in each of those to ascertain specifically and report back to Education Committee about why there's been variances in those items. But the normal procedures for the contracts will be contract administration is held by Property and Architectural Services, who appoint a person who will be responsible to monitor and review any changes both to design and into the cost. And I am aware that PS also contracted an independent quantity surveyor who will review that for value for money and accuracy as well. But as I said, that will be reviewed in more detail and reported separately to the Education Committee.
You want to come back, David?
If you don't mind, Chair, because just based what's said there's a group mentioned, no disrespect to them, but they seem to be protected first. And I think they need to be brought in over a period, a lengthy period. There has been concerns raised about sometimes how they operate. And not, well, you've got the likes of two budgets, over 5% overspent. What are they actually monitoring these things? And I think we need somebody for there, with all due respect to yourself, Claire, I think we need somebody for there to come and answer to us.
I'll get Derek to deal with that.
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of Councillor McKee's question, certainly Policy and Resources Committee is the reporting committee for that service, and certainly there's been regular reporting in relation to particularly the refocusing of the service, but no difficulty at all, both formally reporting progress to committee, but equally importantly ensuring that there is ongoing liaison with members at an area level, because quite clearly the property portfolio cuts across the whole of the region, and sometimes that local liaison on relationship with officers is vital. I certainly acknowledge that, and I'm quite happy to liaise with members at an area level to ensure that's in place, but also not miss the point that quite clearly we need to ensure that there's scrutiny at a corporate level, and that's done through the Policy and Resources. Thank you, Chairman.
You're welcome. David?
If you didn't mind, are you saying that they don't need to come here?
Wouldn't suggest for a minute, Chairman, that nobody should come here. I'm very keen to see officers here. I'm simply confirming that the process for that reporting in terms of their business is certainly to the Policy and Resources Committee. If there is a future wish of this committee to receive a report, I'm sure that wish would be agreed without any reluctance whatsoever.
Thanks, Derek. Archie?
And just coming back straight on that, Chair, I think as Audit and Risk Committee would be unwise that we didn't take the opportunity to look at the process and the governance arrangements in place for that particular, and I would like to see that coming forward at an appropriate time. I don't want to be putting any pressure on the different departments within the council, but I think it's appropriate that we have in front of us a report saying what the process is they actually go through when they find themselves, overspending or having to extend a contract.
Derek?
Thank you, Chairman. Points are well made. Just to also remind members, this has been something that has been looked at very recently by the Scrutiny and Performance Committee, but there's no difficulty at all in revisiting some of that details and ensuring that members are updated accordingly, and we'll arrange for that to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay. Thanks for your input, Claire. Appreciate it. Last risk is that of the Council not having the right management arrangements in place to achieve its objectives. Lorna Meehan, Assistant Chief Executive, was to speak to this. Unfortunately, she's not available today due to illness, as I understand it. So Derek will be standing in her stead. Archie.
Thanks very much, Chair. I know you wouldn't admit this is the last risk that the Council will ever have. There'll be risks as we go on, but the Corporate Risk Register Update Report having this last risk, I think, is really important for the Audit and Risk Committee to understand where we are within the process, what sort of steps we are doing along the way to ensure that we have continuity arrangements in place as well when we go from the 6 departments down to 4. I think the reports given to full Council, the reports given by the Chief Executive, are welcome and all that, but there's always something that we can dig away at as an Audit and Risk Committee, make sure that things are progressing properly. Just an update would be great.
No, just note the point, sorry, Chairman, note the points, and certainly the full council later this month will receive an update report, as Councillor Drybrough referred to. Particularly important in that the council will be asked to take decisions on very much the scrutiny and the audit of the process, and that will be at the heart of that will be elected members, and that's a decision for members to take later this month, because quite clearly we want to ensure that that's managed effectively both at officer and member level.
Archie?
Thanks very much. Very, very grateful for that assurance. I just want to, if I can, Chair, looking at the overall risk register, looking at the role of audit in relation to the risk. We have in the past had some training on, the Audit and Risk Committee has had some training, and there are some new members within the Audit and Risk Committee that might have, which may assist them in their roles later on. We have discussed about retraining and getting some training, organised for the Audit and Risk Committee. I think it would be appropriate this time to ask where we are with that, because I think yourself and I, Chair, were at the original one, and it certainly was worthwhile, and we were talking about benchmarking and all that sort of stuff as well. So where are we with that?
Derek?
Thank you, Chairman. Again, welcome the comments from Councillor Drybrough. All members certainly have benefited from the training, and the feedback's been very positive. We're currently in discussions with colleagues. Unfortunately, there's been some changes of personnel, which has delayed that with the outside body we were hoping to use, as well as it's not gone unnoticed. Liaison with the Chair and Vice Chair in the last few weeks has obviously been an issue for no fault of these individuals. So it's been a bit of a challenging time. That's a simple explanation. The importance of the training is absolutely acknowledged, and now we've had a slight change in the membership again, it would certainly seem opportune to ensure that happens very shortly, as well as the informal training and induction that can happen to members who come on to the committee on an ad hoc basis. So happy to take any further questions, Chairman.
That's helpful, Derek. Ted?
Just really to endorse what Councillor Drybrough has said. I'm acutely aware myself as a relatively new member of this committee that I don't actually have the appropriate training to contribute effectively. So I would welcome the opportunity for future training.
That's appreciated. Archie?
Yeah, thanks very much for that assurance, Derek. And there's only one other question I would like to ask with regards to the overall risk. I mean, members in their own committees should do governance checks, scrutiny of things like that. But are there any other sources of assurance that are available to members on this particular risk register? Because I, for one, will certainly question and challenge officers if I meet them, if there's a certain issue going live that particular day or week or whatever it is, it's being raised by a member of the public or a member of my constituency. So what other sort of areas can we, as an Audit and Risk Committee, as well as the full 47 members, what assurances can be available to those members that things are going forward properly?
Thank you. Derek?
Thank you, Chairman. Very helpful question. Quite clearly, a key plank of that assurance is the enhanced remit that this committee has recently been given by full council. Particularly, it now has a role in actually approving for recommendation to the Policy and Resources Committee the Council's annual governance statement, and that's gone a far more in-depth look at how well the Council is doing, not just on a financial level, but also at a performance level as well in all other aspects. So first and foremost, a direct role of this committee is in fact in the annual governance statement. This committee will also shortly receive the annual local scrutiny plan, and that might be mentioned later today by the external auditor who was in the council yesterday. And that's where we look at external work of scrutiny bodies, including the Care Inspectorate, Education Scotland, the local housing regulator, and Audit Scotland. They'll shortly produce their shared risk assessment with Dumfries and Galloway. They'll be doing that on a national basis, but obviously each local authority will have that local scrutiny plan. This will come before this Audit and Risk Committee, and again, that will be a very important document for us to consider what risk the Council faces. The Corporate Risk Register, therefore, at the same time, will be reviewed, refreshed, and appropriately, either it will be updated and new risks added, some risks taken off, but equally at that time across the council, service departments and committees will refresh risk registers as well. So very much an ongoing process. It's not a start and finish, but in terms of that external assurance to confirm annual governance statement and the shared risk assessment of the 5 external bodies. Thank you, Chairman.
That's helpful. Do you want to come back, Archie, and then you,
Yeah,
Andrew?
That's great, Chair. Obviously, in my role in a previous life in the nuclear industry, audit was all about, when you do an audit, you record, you observe, and you interview people and things like that. I think what we asked for early on with regard to that particular directive coming is a way of actually showing that we are doing our job properly. And I think also that members, the 47 members, if there are any questions about certain things, they should look to challenge and question the officers involved. However, sometimes what you don't get from members is their opinion and how to take things forward, and it could actually help officers as well. And I think it's appropriate that the 47 members should advise where necessary and where appropriate, and if they can, that if there is a certain way forward that can be done to enhance whatever the issue is, then we should be doing that as well.
Again, points well made. Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. It was really to ask as well and seeking reassurance on the senior officer responsibility. And we used to have a directory of responsibility. That's now been amiss for over 12 months. That's a high risk element, I would have thought, if elected members don't know who is responsible for the various sectors within our council. And I'm just very, very concerned about, with the changes that are taking place, are elected members going to get that reassurance through a proper worked out plan so that we can see who exactly is responsible for signing off whatever takes place within the various departments?
Derek?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Wood. I'd actually give the assurance today to members that there is available at this precise moment. It's on Council's website. But again, I'm more than happy to make hard copies available on request, as I have done previously. That document does indeed set out the specific responsibilities of departments and chief officers, directors, heads of service. That is available, and as I say, it's on Dumgal as well. But more specifically, the point in terms of going forward, quite clearly we are in a process of change, and therefore there is a need to ensure that there is absolute clarity in terms of delegations both to committees and to officers. And I'm pleased to confirm the ad hoc review of schemes subcommittee is currently looking at the scheme of delegation to officers, and therefore that process will ensure that there is absolutely minimal risk in terms of there being any uncertainty of who's responsible. So I accept the points being made, and I'm happy to work with the member to just demonstrate where that information is available, and likewise any other members who feel that they would benefit from having that made available to them. Thank you, Chairman.
Suitably assured? Okay. How do you feel? Derek, as colleagues, Derek has indicated that if need be, he'd be more than willing, as it were, to send the relevant information as existing at the moment to all 47 members. Do you feel that that'd be worthwhile? I personally think it would be just a brief resume done electronically, and that's good coming from a Luddite. I would be the first to admit, but just making it clear that this issue came up for discussion today at this committee. And it was felt that it would be helpful for all members. Apart from anything else, it would remind a number of colleagues who are not here today and don't necessarily serve on the committee that we do have such a committee that has met, and I would like to think that what we've done thus far, self-praise is no honour, colleagues, but I would like to think that what we've done thus far today in relation to this particular item of business has been well worthwhile. And I would thank all of you for your input and your involvement, and also the input and involvement of the officials who participated in the process. And on the basis of that somewhat rambling statement, can we move now to the recommendations? Sorry, David, my apologies.
Could I just, I appreciate what you're saying about putting the list to who's responsible for what, but given it's going to change in the next month or so, is it worthwhile doing that?
Well, are you confident it will be the next month or so?
Okay, I'll leave it where it was.
No, David, I'm in, and colleagues, I'm in your hands. I mean, I've merely done what a chairman shouldn't do, is articulate his own personal view. But it's a matter for yourselves, Archie.
Chair, I don't think it would be beyond the realms of Derek to say, here's where we are today, here's where we're hoping to get, and here's the flow chart. Yeah.
Exactly so. No problems with that, David? Okay, thanks. Right. If we can return to the recommendations, then we were asked to note and to comment on the updated corporate risk register for 2014-15. I would like to think that we've done that. As I've said, I would commend you all for your involvement and your input. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 5. This is the Council's external audit plan for 2014-15. PwC, who are the Council's external auditors, have published the plan of work that they intend to undertake for the 14-15 financial year based on their analysis of risks facing the Council. The plan highlights the audit work necessary to ensure that the Council has in place sound arrangements for producing accurate financial statements, for maintaining an effective internal control environment, and for managing performance. The role we have as members, and it does no harm to restate it, is to discuss the work plan and the risks on which it's based. This approach will help the committee to obtain an understanding of the control environment in operation within the Council and of the assurances available through external audit work. We have here today, Lindsay Patterson, who's the engagement leader of PwC, to speak to the report. Lindsay?
Thank you very much. What we've got in front of us is the annual audit plan that we would bring each year to the Audit and Risk Committee. And the purpose of this plan is really to set out our responsibilities as your external auditors and how we plan to discharge them for the audit year 14-15. We set out on page 27 the framework for the audit, which is done in accordance with auditing standards, but also takes account of the Code of Audit Practice issued by Audit Scotland. And that requires us to take a wider approach to the overall audit that we undertake at the Council. If I move into the audit approach on page 29 of the document, we set out there that there are 6 key stages in the PwC audit approach. First of all, starting, and very much been a theme of the discussion so far today, looking at the risks that the Council is facing and therefore the risks for us from an external audit point of view. That's our initial piece of work that we have to do. We also have to consider whether we are independent and make that formal representation to you that we do believe that we're independent auditors. And in one of the appendices to the report, we flagged a piece of additional work that management has asked us to undertake in the context of health and social care integration. And I just wanted to confirm that that piece of work in no way compromises our independence, but we have to consider that before we agree to do any extra work. As well as considering risk, we need to consider the Council itself and understand what the risks that you as a Council face, both in the wider context of local government, the challenging financial environment that all councils are looking at, but also some of the issues that are very specific to Dumfries and Galloway Council itself. And on the final bullet on page 30 of that document, absolutely we make reference to the work of the local area network, where we get together with other scrutiny partners and consider that wider context of risk. And as Derek said, the LAN group were actually at the senior management team yesterday discussing the outcome of that, and very much the risks that have been identified through that process, insofar as they're relevant to the financial audit, have been picked up and taken into account in this audit plan. Moving on to the next page, page 31, where we do start to set out where some of the significant risks are that we will focus on the audit. And some of these, in fact, I think all 3 of the ones that we flagged here were in our report equivalent annual plan last year. The first one around management override of controls is a risk that we have to consider for all audit clients. And it's not something that's specific to Dumfries and Galloway Council, and I want to stress that, but we do need to consider that for every audit there is a risk that management may have an opportunity or an impetus to misstate the financial statement. So we need to consider that. We've set out here the audit approach. Moving on to the next page, where we highlight here, and again, another risk that auditing standards requires us to
consider, which is the risk that there might be some fraud in the way in which the council recognises revenue. That clearly has more of a resonance in the corporate world, where there may be an incentive in particular to make your profits look better. So what we do when we're considering a local authority context is actually to consider that from the point of view of expenditure, which is a much greater driver for the way in which a council will operate. So we consider that as a risk, both in terms of revenue, but also and in particularly in relation to expenditure. And then the final point there was around equal pay claims. They have been in the balance sheet for some time now, but we'll just continue to monitor that and ensure that the balance is appropriately stated. Moving on to the next page, and again, this is an area where we will have reported in prior years that we audit materiality. We don't give an opinion that says the accounts are correct. We give an opinion that says the accounts show a true and fair view. And part of that takes into account materiality. Materiality we calculate based upon your expenditure, because we do see that as a key driver in the council's financial accounts. And that is based on 2% of the expenditure. We've used last year's figures at the moment. We will update that for the actual figures when they become available. That gives us an overall materiality figure of just under £9 million, which I know sounds like a big number. We reduced that by 25%, and so that's which we work in terms of our audit planning. And then finally, we have the de minimis posting level. In the past, we would have calculated that as 5% of our materiality, but Audit Scotland has highlighted that they consider that benchmark to be too high. So I've asked all appointed auditors to work at £250,000 de minimis level. What that means in practice is if there are any items that we identify that need to be adjusted, that management choose not to adjust, we would report them back to you if they were in excess of £1,000. I think to give the audit committee some reassurance over that is that if there were a number of much smaller items, we would consider the impact on the financial statements, and we would also consider the nature of such items, where the indicative may be of a systematic issue that we needed to consider. So it's not as black and white, ignoring everything below £200,000. And I suppose the final thing that I would say that hopefully again will give reassurance to you as audit committee members is that practice has been here. Any adjustments we identify, management will process them. And to be honest, we don't tend to identify all this much. It's a well-controlled finance function. We set out on the next couple of pages our approach to testing, which looks at controls, understands the controls you have in operation, and also performs substantive tests. So it's a mix of different audit work. We also flag here the reliance that we place on internal audit, and I suppose it's really helpful to note that we have a very good working relationship with the internal audit team in the council and are able to place that line. If I move on to fraud, which is covered in pages 36 and 37 of the document, we've just set out here our responsibilities, those of management and those of the Audit and Risk Committee in relation to fraud. And I suppose it's just to say what I say every year. If anyone has any concerns about areas of fraud, my contact details are in the document. I'm very happy for anybody to contact me if there is a concern that you may have. We set out in the next pages that the wider scope audit, which I did allude to earlier, it's not just financial statements that we look at. We need to consider fraud returns, we need to consider the National Fraud Initiative, and there are various grant claims that come into play throughout the year. We also need to look at the Council. And in the current year, Audit Scotland has requested some baseline information around this is something that we're doing across Scotland for all local authorities, and is on the back of last year where there were some concerns starting to emerge across the system that perhaps savings and cuts were starting to financial control environments in a number of councils. And so this is part of Audit Scotland wishing to do some baselining, identify some information.
We'd also consider statutory performance indicators and consider whether your annual governance statement is appropriate. It conforms with our understanding. The PwC team we set out 40. Myself, Claire and Jamie, we were all involved last year, so there's good continuity in your team. That's helpful from our point of view. I think it's helpful from a management point of view in terms of understanding the council and understanding how your systems work. And the final thing which I wanted to say is around the audit. Audit Scotland will issue a range each year to the audited body. What we've agreed this year with management is a 2% reduction in our audit last year to represent the fact that we know you better than we did. There are efficiencies that we can do in the audit because of familiarity. I think a couple of things to note, and I suspect I made the same point last year, that audit fee that's there, which does fit a big number, I know that, it does include monies that are used by Audit Scotland in terms of it funds its activities in the Accounts Commission, and it also covers the audit pension fund of the Court. That was all I was going to say, but happy.
Thanks very much, Need. Archie?
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks for the report given. I think quickly going to the de minimis level, I'm quite happy keeping it at £250,000. I think the projects that we do and the money that we spend within the council is, that would be an appropriate level, I think, to stay at that particular thing. I think when you look at the lower levels, I know, for instance, in DG First, occasionally we get a report of any projects or contracts that are just over £5,000, but under a level that they need to report to in the committee. And I think that's useful for members to actually see. I don't know if that would be appropriate, Chair, for other, like CCS, for instance, where other contracts might be at the £5,000 level, but it is done offline, so because obviously the contracts being personal to individual companies within the region. I'm extremely happy with the report. In other words, I think the diminished one, I would keep it £250,000. Yeah, happy.
Right, would that be the views of all members, that de minimis level? Okay, thank you. Right. Graham?
Maybe a quick question on of the page 39 of 88. It's under probably the wider scope of the audit. Obviously, looking at the grant claims, the bus service operators grant, the safety camera programme, is that partly coming out of the Police Scotland budget as well? Coming out of Police Scotland budget, are you liaising with them, or is this a safety camera, as in the mobile cameras are catching people doing 61 mile an hour on the A75?
In other words, a revenue income stream.
Are you liaising with them, or is this a safety camera going around Dumfries to look at antisocial behaviour, or other areas of the region?
We don't liaise with Police Scotland as part of that.
I was just wondering where the safety camera.
Within the council.
I was just wondering where the safety camera angle came from.
That's purely the name of the grant. That's all.
Thank you. Any other? Andrew, sorry, my apologies.
Fine, Chair. It was really to come back to audit fees. I note that the amount that you've given us back, the 2% reduction, is actually only 10% of the variance between the highest and lowest levels that you could charge. And it's maybe not actually a fair question for yourself. It should probably be directed to the council management. And that is, can they evidence what is the due process that they go through when negotiating such fees?
I mean, in terms of what we do around this process, we would propose a fee to management based upon our expected input for the year, what we think we can do in terms of achieve savings and efficiencies from the prior year, and equally taking into account any additional work that Audit Scotland may require of us, etc. And it also takes account of, for example, attendance at land meetings and so on and so forth. This year, we made a proposition to management, which they did push back on, and on the basis of that, because I had initially sought to see if we could get an inflationary increase. So management did push back on us on that, and ultimately we agreed on a 2% reduction. So they did challenge us, without a doubt.
Well, we'll say no more.
Come on, Andrew.
That's fine, thank you.
David.
Just on the same subject, I hope he challenges Audit Scotland as well. I see they get the money and give you what they think.
Lindsay, you're not here to sing for your supper. Any other comments? Andrew.
One final one, and that is, throughout your work programme, there's no actual hours allocated throughout the year. You know, are you able to give us the actual number of hours that you will fulfil throughout the year when you're doing?
I don't have the number of hours to hand. We do produce budgets in terms of the number of days that we would expect input into the council's audit over the course of the year. So that information could be provided, but I don't have it. Okay?
Okay, that's appreciated. And Archie?
So it's a bit of tongue-in-cheek one this year, because I'm looking at the sort of fraud thing, and one of the incentive pressures is management and other employees have an incentive or under pressure. Do you get the same sort of comments as I do, that some planning officers, for instance, get brown envelopes and things like that to get planning applications through? Because the work that I've seen with planning officers have been brilliant, they've been above board, but the perception of some of the planning officers within the council is not that.
I mean, I think my observation on that would be that planning officers get a pretty hard time in terms of that sort of cloud of suspicion, and that I see across every local authority that I deal with. I certainly don't hear anything more about local ones, and indeed, quite frankly, there's very rarely anything very specific said when people make those kind of
Thanks for that response. Any other questions? No? Comments? Okay. Well, we were asked to note and comment on the external audit plan for 2014-15. We've agreed the proposed de minimis level of £250,000 and otherwise basically approving the plan that's been submitted today. Okay? Yeah, beg pardon, yes, and we'll get the feedback. Thanks for your input, Lindsay. Thank you. Next item, colleagues, is item number 6. This is the standard report on internal audit reports issued. Kevin and his staff. Standing item on the agenda. There are 4 internal audit reports which have been finalised since the last meeting, and they're here before you today. First one, main financial systems, income management. Second one, main financial systems, non-domestic rates. Third, review of higher paid duty payments, HPDs, in other words. And the fourth one is the operation of St Joseph's College School Fund. Paragraph 3.5 of the committee report details the 5 considerations which members may wish to refer to when considering these 4 reports. Kevin, I would ask you now to, Chief Internal Auditor, to speak to your report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing to say really, other than I'm happy to take questions. I don't know if you want to pick the reports that you might wish to answer questions on, or whether you want to take them one at a time.
Thanks, Kevin. Well, I would propose, colleagues, with your agreement, this time we will take them sequentially and we'll adhere to the sequence. Please. I must admit, I found that, well, I won't say anymore. So the first one is the main financial systems income management. What, Archie?
Thanks, Chair. I mean, again, you get a lot of information in these reports, and we're going to talk about what we get later on in the actual the agenda for the committee. But looking at this agreed action plan, Kevin, there's 3-1 rankings in this particular area. Are you getting the support from the department and the revenues senior moment again. The Revenues Office on these action plans, are you happy with the prospect that these actions will be actually completed on time?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I mean, this is an interesting one. I'm sorry. Can any audit report be interesting? But, you know, from my perspective, it's an interesting one. This is an example of where some actions which were previously recommended were not sustained. That's the lightest way of putting it. Okay? And that's why there are 3 Category 1 recommendations here. These 3 recommendations, or something similar to them, have been previously made. Small progress was made on number 2. Number 3, which was critical to us, we have a single person doing the cash book reconciliation. It's a monstrously complicated affair. They're really, really good at it. I spent a huge amount of time last time trying to understand it and was almost defeated. But nevertheless, it shouldn't be that way. And the third one is about leisure and sport, who pay merchant charges and they don't check them to make sure they're correct. That does happen on council transactions. So there are 2 separate merchant groupings. The council's merchant services that it procures, checks are done. For leisure and sport, they do not do it systematically. So these are 3 Category 1 recommendations, basically because they weren't done last time. So, you know, we've got the commitment from people to do it. We'll be more rigorous and vigorous, I think, the scrutiny of achievement of these, I think, this time. And we need to be absolutely sure, particularly around the leisure and sport one, that we're not just accepting charges. There is some work done to verify. The other 2, as I say, revenues are in a difficult position in terms of that cash book reconciliation, but they do appreciate the position and they have agreed that they will have a second person capable of delivering the cash book rec. And the other one is about the way that access to the system is recorded and captured. So I'm happy. I mean, I'm happy with the management response, and it's a question of let's see what happens.
Archie?
Chair, I think with the response, I mean, when Kevin said this is the second time this has come around, or words to that effect, and there wasn't much movement on the previous actions, that would concern me greatly. That you know that the offices are not actually working on action plans from the internal account, especially when we've heard before the opportunities for fraud with regards revenue and income management. I think this one needs to be looked at closely and made sure that, and I'd probably advise the office that we as Audit and Risk Committee are looking at it as well.
Thanks, Archie. I would have to say that I wouldn't want to be accused of being overreacting or being, you know, draconian, but really that it's not acceptable that when recommendations are made and not followed through and implemented. And I think in the first instance, I would wish quietly, and I stress quietly, to get the message out from this committee that is not acceptable. We're not prepared to put up with it, you know, for the future. And I think, as I say, if the message has got out, people are left in no doubt, serious about it. I think that would be helpful. Raising the so, looking at yourself in particular, Kevin, but also Derek here as well. I think that message can be quietly developed. Doing the council. Okay, David and then Andrew.
It's just an action point 2 actually, where again we're talking only 1 person does the job. They've identified somebody else now who is independent of the person's input at the present moment. But a number of times we are coming across where only 1 person's doing this job, and that's a nonsense. If they're off sick, even for a week, it could affect the input of the information. And there should always, I would have thought there should always be 2 people trained, at least 2 trained to carry out that work. And that's probably something that, just as you're saying, Chair, we should draw their attention to.
Thank you. Kevin?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, Councillor McKee's made the core point here, which is to say, I mean, we have every confidence in the process. We have every confidence in the person who's doing it. But when they are off sick, the cash book rec doesn't take place. And it is a key control. And they're very diligent. When they come back, they try and catch up. It usually means they can't do anything else for a week or 10 days while they do the back reconciliations. But that is precisely the point, is there's too much of a dependency. The real solution here sits in getting away from the current process, which is largely a manual reconciliation process. What I'm arguing for, and we're making some progress with, is trying to find a replacement system which allows automatic matching of transactions from bank statements. We do that on the expenditure side. So on the expenditure reconciliation, we download the bank statement and it matches the payments, and those that are left, you only concentrate on the ones that either aren't matched or have got small differences. If we could achieve that on the cash book reconciliation, we'd save buckets of time. It would be really good. Fortunately, there appears to be only one system on the market that does this. So as I say, they're looking at how to update the systems that we're using. The AIM system that we're talking about for this is under review in terms of having it replaced. But the point Councillor McKee makes is exactly right. In this instance, the one person that can do it, if they're off sick, then it just doesn't.
Andrew?
Chair, with respect, I don't think you are overreacting, going back to the fact that we do need to monitor these much more closely, because these are not annual reports. This is 4 years. 5, 3 years, well, even at 3 years. And is there any way of the Audit and Risk Committee putting in place a mechanism whereby you can somehow check up, police it, or whatever terminology you want to use, to make sure that it does get acted upon? Because just sending a message out isn't enough. Sometimes you actually have to, put an action in place.
Kevin?
We, of course, have the recommendations tracking process. So the point is well made, which is the question starts to rise, well, how effective is that process? If we have a system here, and this is a main financial system, in fact, there are 2 steps involved. So the first stage for a main financial system is the recommendations tracking. The second is a year after the audit, we do a follow-up report. Now, it's quite clear that we were satisfied at the time that progress was being made on those recommendations, and we were prepared to accommodate a certain degree of flexibility on it. But that, in retrospect, was a mistake, because obviously taking the pressure off meant that these things weren't addressed. And it's, it's a reflection on internal audit's efficiency, if you like, in respect of this. I'm quite disappointed that we find ourselves in this situation. It isn't good enough. It really isn't. And we had undertakings that these actions would be dealt with. As we did the tracking, we were being told, no, they are being addressed, it's okay. And rather than hang them on for a year, 18 months maybe, if we think sufficient progress has been made on something or it's been underway and there's a commitment to deal with it, we'll say that, yeah, okay, we'll accept that now you're dealing with a recommendation, we can sign it off and close the report, because we don't want the report hanging about for 2 or 3 years, which can happen. So it's quite disappointing to get. So what happened in effect was, as soon as our attention came off this, progress on it stopped, and that that is very unsatisfactory, particularly around key recommendations. Now that's why they're all 3, all category 1s this time, because what we're saying is we're definitely maintaining a focus on these, and we want to see progress made. And the committee, we're saying to the committee, these are tagged as 1s because we didn't make progress on them previously. So, and I am convinced, I mean, we've had discussions with each of the parties involved to say this has not been satisfactory either for you or for us, and they've agreed very clearly that they will now address these things. So, all we can say is, yes, I have confidence and I have the commitment from the service, that the service is that they'll be addressed. But we'll maintain a focus on these in particular because they didn't work.
Okay, Andrew?
Would it be helpful then if that information was fed back in the future to this committee so that we can assess ourselves the progress that's being made?
Originally, it's an interesting question. Originally, when we introduced recommendations tracking, I don't know that any members here would remember that, but there was a situation when at one quarterly meeting we had signed off on a recommendation, and at the following quarterly meeting it was reinstated as not having been done. Now the service was very uncomfortable with that, but I was very clear in saying to them, no, you told me this has happened and I've discovered it hasn't, so I'm putting you back into now running late. Now they were unhappy about that, but they sorted it out. It kind of worked as a pressure point. Now we don't these days try and keep reports open for overly long. We think it's better to move through business, get things fixed, and we've got the follow-up mechanism available. So it's better to sort of try and deal with these in a timely fashion rather than have a report on the go for 2+ years. Now, later on the agenda, there's a discussion paper about how audit reports are communicated to you as a committee, but also where and how you engage with services on those. And it's possible that in that discussion, you know, I think the answer to your question can be developed. Let's do it that way. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions in this particular report? Right. Can we proceed then to item 6B, which is non-domestic rates? Do you wish to add anything else, Kevin, to that? No?
No, Chair, again, happy to take questions.
Right, okay. Questions, colleagues? 6B, main financial systems, non-domestic rates. Okay. So that's noted. Okay. Proceeding now to the 6C, which is the review of higher paid duty payments. Again, Kevin, presumably you would not wish to add anything to that, but something to take questions. Okay. Yes, I have no doubt there will be questions on this one. Archie.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just looking at higher paid duty payments that have been connected for a year or more. Now, obviously, there'll be HR processes in place that say if you're in a job for a particular length of time, then you should be fully substantiated in that particular job. I'm saying, obviously, because of the previous work that I actually did as a trade unionist, there was policies in place that if somebody took a role for, I think it was more than 3 months in the place that I worked, they then got a full substantiated pay in that particular role. So looking at this, when we've got people who have got higher paid duties for more than a year, it sort of concerns me that we have got the wrong structure in place for that particular department. So have you looked at that? Have you discussed that with HR, Kevin?
Yes, Chair, and I mean, it is an interesting area. HPDs are a very useful tool, and you know, we would never argue that they shouldn't be available. I think they are helpful to assist with workforce management and deployment of resources and so on. The core issue here is that HPDs have been used to fix a problem, and then that problem, in the short term, that problem has never been revisited or never gone back to. So within the Council's framework of policies and processes connected with employees, it seems to me, and it's a strong word to use, but it seems to me that the longer term arrangements are irregular. And by that, I mean they are out with the scope of the Council's policy. And the issue here is to say, well, this, you know, we have an improvement from the previous HPD audit. We have many fewer people receiving HPDs, but we still have at the core of it a number of people who've been receiving them for a number of years. Now, there are employment implications or contractual implications for that. You know, I won't assert any particular position because it's open to discussion and debate and argument. But contractual issues start to emerge with long-term arrangements. But it also means that the department has not looked at the way it's organized itself and its operations and so on. It's kind of ignoring a problem and carrying on for a bit longer. Now, some services say that's because, you know, there are certain difficulties, you would say, in the administration of vacancies and filling of posts and these sorts of things. And our colleagues in OD and HR say, no, there isn't. The mechanisms are available. You just need to get on with it and progress it. So we have a bit of a dance going on. But the core of this is to say very clearly to the Council, and we have been listened to on this, and there are movements on it, very satisfactory movements, which is to say, no, these HPDs are a useful mechanism, but in defined circumstances. And if you have other problems, there are other mechanisms for dealing with that, and you need to use the right tool for the right job. We have got a strong commitment now that this is going to be addressed properly this time, and that the recommendation is by November, all HPDs over a year or more will have been looked at very carefully and scrutinized. There may be circumstances when an HPD should be in place for more than a year, but they are very much the exception. And I think the process that we've got agreed to look at this will make sure that there are only very few exceptions.
One back in it?
Please. I mean, the concern I have is, I mean, between 1 and 2 years, there have been 27 of them. Between 2 and 3, there's been 7. Between 3 and 4, there's 3. and it goes up to between 5 and 6.5 years. There's 4 employees who've been at HPD. Now, if I was a shop steward for that the individual, I'd be saying, wait a minute, this guy's got pensions rights, he's got full employment rights, he should be getting paid, you know, after, and even somebody who's on a fixed term contract for longer than 4 years gets that employment right. So there's a cost implication to the council here as well as anything else. There's a cost implication to the individual because he's been paid at that higher pay. And if he or she comes back down, then there may be a fight on our hand, which could cause some problems later on for, you know, the public image of the council and things like that, being not a fair employer. So I'm glad you've got this as a priority 1 case. I think HR need to get their act together and get this sorted out as quickly as possible, along with the trade unions, and I'm sure they can work with the trade unions on getting a best practice somewhere. But I would certainly say that if you're looking at that particular area, a year is far too long to have somebody in a higher paid role. You're looking at 3 months to 6 months as opposed to a year. But we'll see what comes back from HR. Thank you.
Chair, sorry, can I just say, we also, again, this might sound like an item of bureaucracy, the responsibility for HPD sits with services, and OD and HR are not the operators of that system, if you see what I mean. They're there to advise and support, but it's not their job to rule yes or no on an HPD.
Absolutely, but the policy has got to be correct for the services to follow. Now, if the HR advice is given that you can go ahead and do it for as long as you want, then they're going ahead and do it for as long as they want. But if they've got a policy in place that says it needs to be this amount of time and you have to rethink of this and give reasons why if you're going to extend it, then that's HR's responsibility. That is not the services.
I think you're articulating the concerns which I'm sure all members of this committee have over this particular report. There are various issues here which are really, you know, disconcerting, and that's putting it mildly. And I think it's timely and perhaps maybe even overdue that we address these and get this issue really brought resolved. The issues. Any other? David.
Hi, thanks, Chair. It's just when you look at the top of page 5, it's the number of increased the next bands. 6 have increased 3 bands, 4 have increased 4 bands, and 2 have increased 5 bands. That's a fair jump. Now, you would have thought that, well, I could only make assumptions, that these people were sufficiently trained to take on that higher responsibility. And 5 bands, that's some jump. So I think it's something that we need to look at urgently. And could I suggest, and we come back in 2 meetings' time and tell us how we're getting on with reducing the number of higher paid duties?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, we have expressed our concern about that. You kind of, the concern is that if somebody's being asked to take on significantly more complex responsibilities, which is what a 5-band increase represents, okay? What's their competence for that? How has that been demonstrated? And it's quite clear that, you know, I don't think we've ever seen it happen, but there is scope for manipulation. So HR are coming out and saying basically no more than 2 bands on an HPD. If it's above 2 bands, then you're looking at something different. And there's also, for larger increases, there does need to be an open process. It's not a question of asking a person to do the work, it's a question of establishing which persons are competent to do that and putting them into the pot, so to speak. Much more likely, I think, personnel's take on this is to say under vacancy management process, advised, what they're looking to do is instead of offering HPDs to lower graded staff, it won't happen in every instance, but they try and get people on the existing grade to take on those responsibilities. So in other words, you know, why are you paying somebody more money to do this higher graded job? Why aren't you using the people who are already at that job grade to do it? So it's a concept that many departments will find quite challenging to address and to deal with, but that's what they're arguing for, and that's what they think is the correct mechanism. So yes, large increases in HPDs are concerning, but they should be out. In the new policy, there should be a limit of 2 bands maximum on an HPD.
Any other questions on this? Before we leave it then, would it be on the back of the comments, action to be taken. It's HPD payments that have been continuous for a year or more will be reviewed with the objective of regularising them within the council's employment policies. But from what I'm hearing, colleagues, the comments that are being expressed, perhaps the council's employment policies are in need, in relation to this issue, are in need of review as well. So it's not only the issue of regularising them within the council's employment policies, but perhaps maybe a radical reappraisal of the council's employment policies. Your response to that?
Certainly, Chair, that's HR's tack on this, and our discussions with them about our findings and solutions. Their tack has been, yeah, we need to sort this out. So as I say, they're introducing certain things which will be challenging to services, such as limiting the number of bands increased and a very firm rule about no more than a year, which again will present some services with difficulties, but they're going to have to find the correct mechanism for dealing with it. So I do think, yes, but this report has led to a more resolve, should we say, in terms of making sure that HPDs are used appropriately and represent the correct tool. I think so. In terms of, sorry, Chair, I missed Councillor McKee's, I forgot to comment. Councillor McKee was suggesting a follow-up report shortly. Can I suggest that the committee accepts that the recommendation is due for November 15, and when we come back to you with the recommendations tracking report, I would expect to be able to give you a little bit more than just a, yeah, they say it's been done. I would be looking to have done some confirmation work around the commission at that time. So rather than come back with a specific report, can we do it through recommendations tracking, but that's subject to me giving you more information than I usually give you around the
Would that be acceptable, David?
That's fine, Chair. It's just I'm looking at 5.4.1 now, and all forms noted whether it was a new request or a continuation, placing basis of request and had start and end dates recorded in them, confirming that they are time limited. Now that's, I'm afraid that I would say that that's not factual. No, if they're going on for 5 years. So with due respect.
Chair, what happened in our last audit was we discovered that HPDs, which were due to be reviewed, frequently hadn't been. And the system, the recording system on the iTran payroll system, didn't have end dates on. So there were reviews, they were a bit ad hoc, and there was no mechanism for establishing exactly when the review was due. So following our previous audit, the recording system was changed and review dates were entered. So what we're saying here is that, yes, everything we looked at complies with that standard, which is to say there are review dates established, but Councillor McKee is absolutely right. What was in fact happening was they were just being renewed and renewed and renewed. So at review date, they were just being extended. That's what we have to put a stop to.
Archie?
Thanks, Jerry. Just coming back to what you said about we should review all the employment policies in this particular area. I think we need to, because the trade union and management will discuss and improve and things like that. I think this particular one policy, though, certainly does need to be reviewed, and it certainly needs to be reduced in time length. I think if somebody's been 4 to 5.5 years in a higher paid, then the structure is completely wrong within that department. I think the progress in which that department will go forward will be hindered if we don't put somebody in a substantive role. And I think that's the way we take that particular one forward. So that policy itself does need to be reviewed, and I'm happy with the action that's actually in the report. That's a category 1 action, and rightly so. But we can't stop, saying it's on the service. HR needs to be in there advising that service of what the outcome's going to be. The policy should be quite clear to those service managers that there is a time limit within this HPD. I think, as I said before, there's benchmarks out there, there's best practice out there with regards to that. And it is a good tool. If somebody's off for a short period of time, somebody steps up and takes a particular role. I think the whole policy, however, when you see somebody lasting 5.5 years on a higher paid role, there's something seriously wrong with that particular policy. Because somebody else should have been in that position in a full-time role.
I couldn't agree more. As going through these papers, I mean, my comment on that particular issue was that this is nothing short of an indictment. Now, I am aware, of course, that we will have a radical restructuring of the council sooner rather than later, and I think there are a whole raft of ancillary issues which really will have to be dealt with, advised, put into place in the back of that. I'm not suggesting for one moment that delayed taking any action today, almost like sort of kicking something into the long grass. No, as I say, I find various aspects of this really disconcerting. It's been helpful to have it brought before us, but I think we've got to grasp this. Andrew, sorry, my apologies.
No, fine. It was really to ask, is this not a matter that this committee could recommend to scrutiny for further investigation?
It might, I mean, we've got the joint consultative group this afternoon. It might be an idea for this committee to tell the joint consultative group, you need to start looking at this. Because it's a terms and condition at the end of the day. It'll be a trade union and employer thing. And it's a policy that we have got concerns about as an audit and risk committee. So taking it there rather as an actual, committee policy and resources, whatever. Certainly in the terms and condition, the joint consultative group should be looking at it.
You want to respond to the comment that Archie's making?
I think that I would still feel an element of comfort if it was to be suggested to the scrutiny to have a further look at it as well. I do take on exactly what the Council Driver was saying, and I have no problem, no issue with that, because I think that's an equally good action to take. But I do believe that I follow through with recommending to scrutiny that they should investigate, more in depth, because it's not just the one department we're talking about, it's throughout the whole of the council. So if that's acceptable.
I would have to say, Andrew, that I like the idea, as it were, of getting a joint consultative mechanisms involved and reviewing it in the first instance. I take it, Kevin, that you would have no difficulties from the point of view of your service with developing such a suggestion. And after that's done, I think we can look at what further action, if any, needs to be taken on the back of it.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, not being proprietorial, I think we've done a good job on this. So I'm not sure what added value scrutiny could attach to it. I guess there's a broader question in here about how does the council, what are its processes and policies in connection with managing its workforce in terms of the variations that naturally occur, such as covering vacancies or promoted posts or these sorts of things. So that would be a broader question which scrutiny might be more productive on, rather than the specifics, should we say, of this. So, but certainly in terms of the joint consultative group, I mean, I think if, with the chair, was agreed, if we have a representative on the group, then by all means, I think the committee can endorse that one of its members take that to the group and point out or report in to say that the Audit and Risk Management Committee has considered a report and it has these concerns, and there's absolutely no reason why not to report it in.
I would have to say, colleagues, that I've already said on a couple of occasions, I find various aspects of this report disconcerting. It obviously has an impact not only on the council, but arguably even more of an impact on the council's workforce and employees. And I think on that basis, I think the suggestion to get the trade union side involved is an eminently sensible and appropriate one. And on that basis, as I say, I would like to think we can do that and then feed it back here for such further action as is deemed necessary or appropriate. Anyway, Derek.
Thank you, Chairman. Kevin has indicated the report does not make pleasant reading, but the fact that we've now done the audit, it clearly highlights that the matter has been taken seriously. It's just to reassure members, being no doubt that the corporate management team take this matter very seriously, and I'm sure we'd be quite comfortable with this being raised at the JCG, as you've suggested, but also to remind members that we mentioned earlier the management changes, and as members will be aware, there are a whole number of changes being made to employment policies recently agreed at the Policy and Resources Committee, and quite clearly there's no difficulty in us communicating to HR colleagues a reaffirmation of the importance of the particular policy surrounding higher paid duties. So just to confirm, absolutely no doubt about the seriousness in which this report's been viewed by the corporate management of the Council, Chairman.
That's helpful, Derek. Right, can we move on then to item 6D, which is the operation of St Joseph's College School Fund. Any questions? Yes,
No questions here. I mean, obviously we've had you know, the operation of school funds before us before, and I think, you know, the findings that Kevin actually comes forward with, I haven't got any problem with the action plan. I'll just come back to what we said before, however, if there's an action plan that isn't being followed, we need to know about it so that we can put actions in place to try and rectify the non-conformance of the already agreed action plan. I've got no problem with this, Chair.
No, sorry, Andrew.
It was really, I actually found it a very interesting report, and was wondering, when such a report gets drafted up like this, the outcomes, do they get circulated through the education department so that other schools can get an overview of what's happened in this particular instance, that they might be able to take actions as well?
Yes, it's interesting. The risk of appearing sexist, which I most definitely not. The television program Friends some years ago, two of the male characters in it sort of had a bit of a secret between themselves, and it leaked out. And the reason it leaked out is because one of them had told his partner, and the other, remember, he cuffed him around the ear and he said, "Don't you know women talk?" By which it's men, you know, well, I don't mean that in a sexist sense. I mean, in the most positive sense. Well, the same applies here. Schools talk. So what we found was, when the first audits that we did, when we went to number 3 or 4, we discovered that the problems that had identified at number 1 and 2 had been fixed in schools 3 and 4, because schools 1 and 2 had talked to 3 and 4. And so as we've proceeded, we found that there have been improvements communicated, you know, because I think they phone one up and say, "What did it say? What was in it?" "Oh, right, we're not doing that. We better sort that out then." So we have progression. It's interesting. Yes, the schools' reports are communicated to education. In the past, the way we've done this is we have not reported the individual reports to this committee, but we have consolidated them, usually at the end of a year, and given you a report, and we'll have said, "We visited 6 schools, and here are the highlights coming from them." So you didn't know the specifics of individual schools, but you did get the general picture. But education do find them helpful because it gives them an idea of what's happening, and it gives them an idea of common issues. And the idea behind that is, in due course, if advice and guidance can be produced as a result of a series of reports, then education would be looking to do that. So it's good work. It's effective. I don't know why. It must have been crazy. I decided to bring the individual reports to you. I think so, on the assumption that members might have a direct interest in some of them. I think we probably won't do that again. I think we'll go back to the previous arrangement, which is where, when we do schools, we'll do a number in a year, and then we'll report you a consolidated position. There are certain exposures in these reports coming to a public committee like this, which I'm slightly uncomfortable with, should we say. So I'm mindful of that. I'll probably revert back to giving you summated reports on future occasions.
Yeah, sorry, Monica.
Because what I did notice as well in the report, it was a multiple number of accounts that they were dealing with, and also the fact they were taking out, or they had a charitable status, which was maybe unnecessary. And I just wondered how many other schools might find themselves in a similar situation, that early advice on these particular items might be beneficial.
Yes, I mean, we have found other schools have opted for charitable status, which, I cannot see a reason for doing that. And in some ways, I'm surprised that Oscar entertained it, but they are historical. Now, Oscar has cleaned through its charitable registers and has deregistered certain organisations which are either not active or don't appear to be fitting in with the concept. So it seems to me schools is a ripe area for Oscar to say, no, we're not allowing that. We're not going to have schools that are in local authority control with charitable status, but they haven't done it to date. Our advice to the schools where we found that is to say it's completely pointless. There's a bit of disengagement needed to get out of that situation, but we recommend you start that process. It's a historical reason. I think it was considered a good idea some years ago, and it appears to be attached to particular personalities or particular characters, should we say, who thought it was a kind of a bright spark idea. But generally speaking, it's not. It doesn't offer anything. There's no benefit from it, and it complicates matters. So our advice generally to schools which have these is to say, get rid of
Okay, well, we've completed our consideration of the 4 reports which make up this item of business. We'll ask, in accordance with section 2, to note and to comment on the internal audit reports finalised. Claire, would you like to refresh our memories on, since it's essentially 4 reports under the one heading, just exactly what did we agree? I've got a fair idea, I think, but I'm not, you know.
Chairman, I don't want to prolong the meeting. Basically, in a nutshell, with the income management, it's a subtle, maybe not so subtle message to officers involved that this needs sorted ASAP. There's no particular comments on non-domestic rates. In terms of higher paid duties, initial discussions at the JC, which this afternoon, I believe, and CMT are on board with this, and a message to HR that we need to get HPD in line with the current employment policies, and no particular issues arising out of the fund other than going to consolidate.
Elegantly and succinctly put. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the one, it's item number 7. It's the performance report against external audit action plans. The report is designed to enable the committee to assure itself that control issues identified by the Internal Audit Service have been addressed by management in an appropriate and timely fashion. And I would point out to you, colleagues, that paragraph 3.3 of the report, progress monitoring now includes in the notes the dates at which actions were reported as being complete. I trust that you would agree with me that that is satisfactory. I would also draw your attention, colleagues, to paragraph 3.9, where Kevin has helpfully outlined the committee's role in relation to internal audit action plans. That can never be restated enough as far as I'm concerned. And on that basis, Kevin, I would ask you, do you wish to speak to your report or to take questions? You're happy enough to take questions? Okay, colleagues? Archie?
Chair, I think it's overall a good report, but there are a couple of areas which have been missed by social work services. And when you look at what's actually going to happen over the next year or so with integration in adult services, we need to make sure that the actions that have already been put on social work services actually get into place as quickly as possible. And I think I'm looking for assurance from Kevin that the discussion that I've had with the different departments with the actions on them, that is going to happen. Yeah.
Yes, Chair. I mean, the DP protection risk, there's, in some cases, there's been quite a lot of work required, should we say, to be able to get to a point where we're more confident about what's going on. I'm happy. I mean, we've got 2 extended recommendations under that one for social work, which were agreed at the last committee, in fact. But, we're confident that there's progress being made on these, and we shouldn't have a problem with them at all. So, but yes, the point's well made. This is an important area, particularly for social work. It was done, I think, first in this cycle. We're doing all the departments in turn, but social work was the first visited because we recognised that's where the biggest risks in data protection sat. So, and there's been a change of management in the meantime since the report was issued, but we're confident that the new management group there understand the requirements and are taking them seriously and progressing it.
Satisfied with the response, Archie?
Thanks, Chair. Again, I think it's a good report. It shows that we're heading in the right direction. But those 2 particular areas I thought were relevant to highlight because of the importance of the nature of the work.
Exactly so, sir. Any other questions? Comments? Okay. Can we go then on that basis to the recommendations, which are to note and comment on the progress being made in implementing the internal audit recommendations as detailed in the appendix. I take it, colleagues, you have no objections to us saying that we've noted and we're approving the progress being made. Okay? Thanks very much. Thank you. Next item, colleagues, is item number 8. And this is the 9 months progress against the 2014-15 internal audit plan. The audit team, Kevin's audit team, operates to a plan agreed at the beginning of each financial year. Initially, the plan, excuse me, initially submitted for approval in April, the current year's plan was agreed by the Audit and Risk Management Committee at its meeting on the 12th of June of last year. This report provides information about the progress made by internal audit against that plan after 9 months. I'm pleased to note that the assurances from the officer outlined in paragraph 3.9 of the report that good progress is being made with the audit plan being substantially addressed by the end of the year. Kevin, do you have anything further to add to your report? No. Okay. Questions, anyone? Archie?
Not a question, just a comment on the good job that Kevin and his team are actually doing in this. Particularly, it's going to be interesting when we come into the changes of going to 6 departments to 4. And obviously, you have to look forward and how you plan those particular audits as well. So something to look forward to, Kevin, I'm sure, for the next couple of years.
Is that your tongue in your cheek, Archie? Any? Do you want to respond to that, Kevin? No? Okay. Any other comments or questions, colleagues? Filling which we'll go to section 2 of the report. Noted and approved. Next item is item number 9, which deals with options in the presentation to this committee of internal audit reports by Kevin's service. At our last meeting, the 2nd of December of last year, we asked for a report on the options for receiving internal audit reports. Previously, members of the committee had also expressed an interest in seeing representatives of service committees attending committee meetings where at least some internal audit reports are being considered, and there were brief discussions on this at the members' seminar following upon that December meeting of the committee, but it's appropriate to consider both matters together now. The options for change are detailed in paragraph 3.11 of Kevin's report, and these suggestions for improving the reporting of internal audit reports to the committee are now a matter for ourselves to consider and to determine today. I would ask you, Kevin, as previously, do you have anything further to add to your report, sir? Okay. Questions, comments, Archie?
Thanks, Ian. I think it's useful getting this report back, seeing the options that we've actually got, and in particular the options for change. I was of a mind prior to today, and one of the audits to say perhaps we should have just a summary of the action plan, and then we can, because one of the things Kevin's previously said is we don't give him an awful lot of questions in some of the audits that he actually does. And that's because of the information that we actually get in the report, and we do read his report, so perhaps the questions would come with just the action plan. What did you mean by this? You know, that type of thing. However, after the HPD internal audit today, I think what we get is sufficient for us to ask questions as well as look at the response from the different departments. So, looking at the options for change here, I'm quite happy to stay as we are, except for one thing. Perhaps we can get the internal audit reports, but set an earlier date in circulation, perhaps 14 days or 21 days, rather than the 7 days beforehand. But the internal audit reports themselves, because then at least then we can have a better look at that. If we have any questions, then we can contact Kevin as to what that's actually about, and that would actually help the process go through. So that would be my suggestion, is that we stay as we are with the internal audit reports as written, however, perhaps get them 14 days before rather as the 7 days before.
Thanks, Archie. Kevin, do you wish to make any response to that?
No, Chair, thank you. I'm happy with that. We would work to that. You'll be well aware that the committee cycle provides a point. We work to the committee dates to try and have reports ready, and it's not. They're not coming off the production line necessarily at defined intervals. So it's perfectly obvious that what happens is, with the committee coming into view, I get my whip out and we try and get as many reports ready as possible. And I am conscious that sometimes we're running it quite tight. We're giving you a report 7 or 8 days before the committee, which can be quite complex and quite involved. And that's not terribly satisfactory from your perspective of being able to look at it, think of it, and maybe even do a bit of research around the subject area if you wanted to bring those questions forward. So, with a completely open heart, yes, I'm quite happy if you want to receive the reports earlier. I would be very disappointed if we wound back up in the situation when I wasn't getting any questions on reports. Now that, I don't have to send them to you at all. We can put them on the web page and it's up to you to go and have a look at them and that sort of stuff. But when that happened in the past, it was obvious to me that members, due to other pressures and so on, were not always reading those reports. So the sort of core behind this for me is to say to you, I think if you can give your time to read the reports, maybe not necessarily all of them. Some of them are horribly dry. I do appreciate that, and dull as ditch water. But usually, I have in the past. I'll say this tongue in cheek. Sometimes there are hand grenades in some of my reports, and that's how I know when they've not been read. Is because I don't get the reaction I'm expecting on them. I'm not saying I'm doing it deliberately, but sometimes we have to word things in a particular way. But it should be shouting at you, and then when you don't get a question on it, when I don't get a question on it, I'm going, they haven't read the report. So that's not true, but that's disappointing, shall we say? That's disappointing. So I would always ask members of the committee, as far as is possible, to have read the report. Sometimes they can be difficult to comprehend and understand, and sometimes my dreadful writing is likely to obscure rather than elucidate. But if 14 days or even 21 days helps you do that, then of course I'd be very pleased to support that.
Could just come back on that, because obviously in throwing a grenade into a report and that's not picking up. It may be because some of us haven't been trained in looking at audit and things like that, as opposed to, which is why I brought that particular issue up earlier on. I think it is important that we do find, within those things, and as a internal auditor, you have also got to advise us where you think there are grenades, so we can have a better look at it. And I think given that, I think 14 days would be a good number of days to be able to do the research on that particular thing, give us time to challenge and question anybody involved in it.
I think that's fair. Andrew?
Well, just the remark about throwing hand grenades. How about this for a hand grenade? Would it be worthwhile looking at exchanging our lead officer on audit with another lead officer from another area? And the reason I suggest this is because it might help the independent factor when we're working with our external auditors as well, that it is then seen as much more independent.
Kevin?
I'm being thick, Chair. I'm sorry. What are you thinking? I mean, we have.
Well, how do you fancy working in Kilmarnock for us?
Well, that is unfortunately what I thought the council was saying. I was hoping he wasn't. But the bit we haven't yet discussed, Chair, is also about engaging with services. That's the sort of part 2 of this, which is to say at what point, or if ever, or do you want to engage with services on it? And it is part of your job to confirm, perhaps not for every single report, but to confirm that we've done a good job. And one of your references for that is it's your own opinion on the issues we've brought forward and the way that we have dealt with the arising matters, but also for the service involved, as well as external audit as well. So you should be taking assurances from as many sources as possible that internal audit is worthwhile and it's focused on the correct things and it's coming up with the right solutions.
Well, can I just before you do answer, I was going to ask Lindsay if she has any comments to express on this from an external audit perspective. That wasn't your thrust of your question, was it? Right, sorry, my apologies. On you go then. If you want to add to that, please do.
I mean, one of the things maybe Andrew isn't aware is that obviously the internal audits also have a benchmarking meeting as well, right across Scotland. The issue that Kevin actually raised was something I was going to talk about, was the action priority ones. For instance, earlier on, in one of the internal audits, you had said this was the second time it had come and there was 3 priorities. I think that should go to service committees. Those actions that have not been acted upon by the different departments, where they've been, they may have been action level 2 or 3, but because they haven't the action of intent went to 1, I think that certainly should go to committee and say, this is went to audit and report. Audit and report have said, you need to get a grip of your different departments.
We'll come back to that specific, Archie, in the back of Lindsay's comments.
I mean, in terms of the comments, I picked it up about changing or swapping heads of internal audit with another authority about and in the context of maintaining independence. And I suppose I think it's important from my point of view to see that there is quite a difference between the independence as an external auditor and independence as an internal auditor. They are quite different, and mine is almost a statutory independence that I have to maintain. The independence of internal audit is slightly different, and I think they're generally seen as part of management, so they don't need to be absolutely independent. So I think it is a different context. I think one of the advantages we have by having that continuity of internal audit is the knowledge that he or she will build up in the organisation, and actually has that ability to get under the skin of it and sort of follow his nose to a certain extent in terms of where are the areas that you look at. And I think you would lose some of that, a bit of swapping. What I think can be quite good might be a peer-to-peer review, and maybe there's actually happened whereby, and I know that there are forums for heads of internal audit in the local sector anyway, but actually maybe having from another alternative function have a look at what you do and more on a more informal basis say, well, we do this, we do that, and share ideas. But I think swapping would lose more than you would gain from that, if I'm honest, and I've no idea if that was the right answer, Kevin.
Grateful to you for your response. Do you want to come back?
No, that's the very point I'm trying to get at, is to have that opportunity for others to bring in their presentational skills and what they can bring to it. Because while each and every one will be working to the exact same regulations, it's how they present that and their delivery, and it's just a different aspect to it. And I think it's helpful and healthy to have that, because familiarity and continuity can sometimes create other issues and problems. I think it doesn't do any harm to shake a system up occasionally and give people an insight of just what's going on from a different dimension.
Chair, I follow up. Lindsay's comments are very helpful and timely. There is something called Public Sector Internal Audit Standards, which is has emerged from international standards for internal auditing, and they're now mandatory. So my team is obliged to adhere to these standards, and in fact also to report on our adherence or non-adherence to them as part of our annual controls assurance statement. Included in that mechanism, included in PSIS, is a requirement for the internal audit section to put itself open to scrutiny to an external party once every 5 years. And the group that Lindsay's talking about, the peer group, has decided the way they're going to deal with that is to set up a process of peer review. So they are, as a group, building a format, if you like, an assessment format, and they're looking at a quality control mechanism for consistency and these sorts of things. But the idea is that local authorities will swap reviewers. So now I have not participated in that to date. I had reservations about some elements of it, so I wanted to see how it was going. Traditionally, what we'd have done was got in an external party to review what we do and report to you on it. That would be the plan behind it. But there is good progress being made on the peer review mechanism. So I'm not fully committed to it yet. But one of the reasons it was being done is to reduce costs, because it means you're not paying a large fee to an external party to come and review. So that was the idea, was it all costed something to do to participate in it, but it saves us spending cash, so to speak. So I'll keep that under review, but it is built in PSIS that there will be a review of internal audit at some point. It will be for the committee, if you wish, to bring that forward. On my timescale, I'm thinking another year probably. But if you wanted it done differently, that would be open to you to do, of course. But I'll come back with a firmer recommendation on this before too long, once I think things have matured a little and settled down. So yes, we will be subject to an external scrutiny from probably, if we went down that mechanism, from another local authority operating to the same standards we're meant to.
Thank you. Going back to the point that Archie made about three category 1, which is being referred to appropriate committee, I think that's meets an eminently sensible suggestion. And, I make no apologies for saying this. We've had this discussion in the past, Archie. Joel Dykes. I personally would like to see this committee repositioned at the very core of the council. Now, that's not meant to be. I hope that's not misconstrued as an attempt to arrogate powers to ourselves. It's not. But I think, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, stories of those that have gone before, but I think in the past there's been a perception, maybe even a reality, that this committee, is almost like a step bairn that has never really sort of sat comfortably. I think that's got. It should never. If that has happened, it should never have been allowed to develop. But at the end of the day, it's really got to be addressed, and the function and the role and the remit of this committee has got to be positioned as far as I'm very clear. Make no apologies for saying that. And I think that what Archie is suggesting is a tangible way of assisting in that process. In other words, there's a reference goes from this committee to the relevant service committee. Look, the service that you hold accountable is not performing these significant respects. Now, I'm not suggesting you necessarily do it for category 2 or 3, but I think you should always do it as you've said, sir, on the basis of category 1. So I would like to see us, into to the consideration of this. Would that be acceptable to you, colleagues? Okay. No further questions, comments? Right, okay. Claire, you made such a good job of the last one. Can I ask you to do the same this time, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Basically want to keep the audit committee reports in the same format, but receive them 14 days beforehand if possible, acknowledging that Kevin works to a committee timetable, etc., but where possible 14 days before. And then just there you've agreed that any category 1 actions should be referred to the appropriate service from this.
Thanks very much, Claire. Moving on then to item number 10, which is the membership of the Joint Safety Committee. The purpose of this report, colleagues, is to agree the council representation on this committee, the Joint Safety Committee, which was formed to comply with the trade union's request under the Safety Representatives and Safety Committee Regulations of 1977 as amended. Obviously, this is a matter for us to determine today. I would put it to you on that basis that the chair of the committee, Councillor Dykes, is not a member of the Joint Safety Committee. I would ask Martin Ogilvie, who's rejoined at the meeting, Senior Manager of Business Management, to speak to this report. Martin, do you have anything further to add?
Yeah, councillors, thank you, Chair. The councillors will be aware that attached to the paper there's a copy of the membership and constitution. It's been tradition over recent years to balance out the number of representatives from the recognised trade unions with the same number of elected members. So with the change in membership as outlined in paragraph 3.4, there's currently a vacancy. It's really up to this committee to agree to fill that so that there's balance brought back to the joint
Archie?
Chair, I would agree with yourself. I mean, when you were chair before and I was chair, after that we were both members of the Health and Safety Committee, as we are at the moment as well. And I think it's right that and appropriate that the chair of the Audit and Risk Committee should be the member. Obviously, Councillor Dykes, in her illness at the moment, is recuperating, and hopefully she gets better very, very shortly. But I'm sure she would be, delighted to join the Health and Safety Committee and go into the sort of aspects of lifelong learning. Then that would be appropriate too. So I would certainly, commit your opinion that the chair should be part of the Health and Safety.
Grateful. I think you take it then, colleagues, that we'd all agreed that the chair of the committee should be a member of the Joint Safety Committee. I may say that the last meeting in particular of the Joint Safety Committee was, we're again now sort of taking the attitude that, you know, it's essential and imperative that health and safety issues are at the core of all council functioning activities. You know, I think the decision we're taking today to appoint the chair is valid and a good decision. Okay, I won't ask you to sum up this one. Well, yes, on you go then. Item 11, Audit and Risk Management Committee Report Update. This report provides an update on the function and future operation of this committee. Draw it to your attention, colleagues, that the remit of the committee was amended following the agreement of the full council before Christmas. It was Christmas 2014. The revised remit is set out in paragraph 3.3 of the committee report. Derek, do you have anything further to add, sir?
Thank you, Chairman. As I've said in the report, we first considered this on the 30th of October as a committee, Chairman, and the context for that was indeed the revised guidance from CTee setting out future function of operation of audit committees, and I'm pleased to note that full council very much supported the direction of travel that this committee had suggested, both at committee and also the subsequent member seminar. Moving forward, as I've said in the report, a lot of change in the council just now, so it seems more than appropriate for us to very much reflect on that, and the remit for this sits with the ad hoc review of schemes, and it's to assure members that the further enhancing of the Audit and Risk Committee is certainly something that the ad hoc scheme subcommittee is taking seriously. Therefore, we'll be in a position to fully endorse the CTee guidance in terms of the function of audit committees, and I would hope that members are assured that the action taken to date and that plan gives you that confidence. Thank you, Chairman.
Archie.
Thanks very much, Chair. And I'm just looking at 3.6 in the report itself, which we're going to look at to implement and identify training requirements for audit and risk management members in relation to CTee core training, which is great. It covers the issues that we discussed earlier on, but also on health and safety. I think health and safety training is really important for all members. And I always learn something new on a training thing anyway, so hopefully I'll learn something new when it comes along. Happy to go with the recommendations, Chair.
Agreed. That's perfect. Right. Well, colleagues, I have no further business notified. So on that basis, I'll conclude the meeting. I would thank you all for your attendance, but more importantly, for your involvement and your input.